Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're dialing in from, and welcome to Building Decarbonization Presents. And this month, it's the Switches On campaign. My name is Panama Bartholomew. I'm the director for the Building Decarbonization Coalition, and thank you for joining us for our monthly webinar series, BDC Presents. And we got a great one for you. Very excited to be talking about the largest building electrification consumer campaign in the galaxy. We haven't checked, but we're pretty sure. So we're very excited to talk to you about the campaign. We got two of our fantastic BDC staff to come in and talk today, and we're looking forward to a fantastic conversation. And where's my cursor? There it is. So you may be wondering, or may not, but if you are, those that are wondering about the Building Decarbonization Coalition, who's hosting this webinar, we are a coalition of energy providers, manufacturers of heating equipment, the wonderful design and construction community, local governments, non-governmental organizations, and others that all work together to eliminate pollution from the built environment by switching off of natural gas appliances and over to all electric, highly efficient buildings. We do this through working together on policy and market mechanisms. You see up on the screen some of our 280 members that have joined in and take part in discussions and forums and initiatives in order to transform the built environment. We're headquartered in California, but have offices in California and New York, and staff just all over the place. Back in end of 2018 into 2019, we developed a roadmap for how to decarbonize California's buildings as our first attempt to really take a look at what it's going to take to have full decarbonization of the building stock. And inherent in that is some goals that we adopted, and those goals you see up on the screen. But it called for the adoption of a building code in California to require that all buildings being built into that code be emissions free or all electric, and then being provided electricity from either on-site renewable energy or clean energy provided from the grid, and that the state begin to adopt a series of programs to reduce existing buildings emissions. And so that we're winding it down that by 2045, no later than 2045, we've eliminated emissions from the built environment. And inherent in that is the expectation that if we're to hit carbon neutrality by 2045 for the building sector, and most of the appliances that we talk about, space heating, water heating, cooking, have a 15 to 20 year life cycle, we really can't be expecting to be selling any of these appliances, gas appliances, after 2030. And so we and members of the coalition adopted targets to make sure that by 2030, we'd be advocating for policies that all future appliances would be all electric. And so behind those numerical goals, though, was a recognition that about 5 really market transformation and policy transformation goals would have to be adopted. Number one, awareness of the benefits of building electrification was going to have to be much more widespread than it is right now. And that's really across the board, consumers, policymakers, et cetera. Number two, customers have to get a good value out of building electrification. This includes both the capital costs of purchasing highly efficient electric appliances, but also we need to make sure that we've reformed rates in such a way that people are actually getting a benefit on their operating costs of all electric buildings. Number three, we need to make sure that people can actually make money off of this industry. We need to learn lessons from the solar industry and the energy efficiency industry and how we built those up, and make sure that the electrification industry is one where installers and builders can actually make a profit, and preferably more money than installing the appliances we don't want them to install. Number four, we need to make sure that we're providing clarity to the supply chain about where the market is going and where policies are going, so that the supply chain has time to ramp up and to be able to respond, to be able to provide the products we need, and for us to be taking barriers to the supply chain out of the way, such as undersized electrical panels or a lack of other building infrastructure. And lastly, we need to make sure all of our policies are aligned. So our clean air policies, our energy efficiency policies, our affordable housing policies aren't out of alignment with our climate policies. And today's webinar and all of our webinars really get back to that first goal. Goal number one about raising awareness. That's why we do this monthly webinar series, is an effort to be able to bring in some of the top thinkers, the top initiatives, the top people in this space to be able to talk about interesting, relevant topics as it relates to building decarbonization. So thank you for joining us this month for what is going to be a double down awareness raising session as we talk about consumer awareness campaigns. Join us at the end of the month in just 2 weeks, if you like, for a fantastic webinar with the California State University system. They're the largest 4-year university system in the world, and they've adopted a carbon neutrality pledge, and they're going to be going over the framework for how you take 23 campuses to carbon neutrality over the next 2 decades, and the plans for different climate zones, different sizes, approaches. It's going to be a fascinating presentation from some great presenters on the CSU system. So just some logistics before I introduce our team and get you over to them. Everyone is muted. We had just under 300 registrants for this webinar, and so we can't have everybody unmuted. So everyone is muted, but we do want you to ask any questions, clarifying or non-clarifying questions. Feel free to ask any questions either via the chat or the question and answer box, and we will answer them at the end of the remarks, may even call on you to ask them. The webinar is being recorded, so please act accordingly. Members of the coalition do have access to the recording through our member portal, plus many other great benefits of being a member. Membership is incredibly easy and incredibly affordable. It's the best way to be able to get into the top forum of other leaders in this space that are discussing all the issues that we need to address to push building decarbonization. So please do consider joining the Building Decarbonization Coalition. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing. Here's how you can join the coalition. And I'm going to give Jess a chance to load up her presentation. I'll switch over to her right now. And as she does, I will introduce our 2 speakers. So wonderful, Jess, well done. So Jessica Leader is our Director of Communications here at the Building Decarbonization Coalition, and leading the effort on a number of our different communications initiatives, including the one you're about to hear about, the Switches On. She came to us from the fabulous company of Sunrun, and we've been very excited to have her on the team, and she's going to be co-presenting with Rebecca Rothman, who's a project manager for the Switches On and will be responsible for all of its success moving forward. Rebecca comes to us from the wonderful company of Pacific Gas and Electric, where she was in management over seems like about 10 different parts of the organization at different times in her career there. I'm going to hand it over to Jess and Rebecca. They're going to go over what we believe is the largest consumer education campaign in at least the country, if not the universe, around building electrification. And we're very excited to not only have you hear about the campaign and what's coming up, but hopefully to engage you at different levels of partnership in this campaign. This campaign will only be successful if the coalition and the community of building decarbonization comes together around the campaign and supports it in part and as part of it. So we look forward to figuring out how we can engage you, your organization, and your individual in the campaign. And with that, I hand it over to Jess and Rebecca. Thank you for joining us, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Panama. So as Panama said, my name is Jess Leader, and I'm the Director of Strategic Outreach here at the BDC. And the Switches On is really just like the thing that I kind of dove into headfirst since I got here. And the water feels good. It's really, this is such an excellent campaign, and I'm so excited to be a part of it. In particular, I am so excited to be here with Rebecca, my ride or die, who has just truly helped make this campaign what it is. We have a really awesome team that we're working together with. Kristen George Bagdanov, who's our senior research associate on the BDC side. And then we have a bunch of partners, which I'm sure we'll be continuously telling you all about throughout this campaign, because you know, the common theme throughout this is very much so collaboration and community, and the fact that, you know, we're not going to be able to get to where we want to get in electrification if it's not this holistic effort coming from the creative agency who's working with us, School of Thought, and they're incredible. We're about to be working with a PR agency who's really going to be making sure that this, you know, this campaign and electrification in general is being shouted from the rooftops, and all of our funding partners. So we're going to be speaking more about that, but this is such an important aspect of so many different people's business strategies, and you're really going to be able to see how that is kind of imbued throughout the campaign. So what is the Switches On? It's a California-wide electrification campaign that's just encouraging consumers to swap out gas-powered appliances for electric appliances. It's funded, as we mentioned, we have funding partners. So it's funded through a combination of something called the Tech Initiative and the Tech Program and individual partners. The Tech Program is a CPUC initiative that basically brings together a bunch of giants in the industry and ensures that they are supporting contractors, providing incentives, and a lot of other valuable aspects of electrification to kind of make this market move forward in California. This is a particularly unique opportunity right now. As Panama mentioned, nothing has really been done like this before, either in California, in other states, or on a national level. And really, as far as I know, not on an international level in the same way either. So a big part of what we're trying to do is build a template that can be easily replicated and ensure that electrification is being appropriately communicated across the board. You know, we are in the process of building this and showing its success in California, and I'm really excited to be coming from a place of abundance and making sure that everybody can utilize this and everybody can talk about this important thing. So, you know, a big question is why? A lot of people, they think about clean energy and they think about EVs, and the idea of saying you need to electrify to also get us to this better energy future is a little confusing. So I kind of wanted to just take a second to explain the way that I think about this and the impetus for electrification from our end, and how it really should be translated for consumers or for people. So when you think about how things are powered in your home, it really comes from these two different options, right? You either get gas or electric. And electric is a full portfolio of a bunch of different types of energy. So you have, and that obviously varies depending on where you are, but you have a lot of times your fossil fuels, and then you also have very different very good opportunities for renewables, and more than that, the more things that are on the grid, the more opportunities there are to increase the amount of renewable energy and the amount of battery storage and the amount of ways that we can provide cleaner energy to people. So just at the heart of it, more people that are able to move off gas, we are able to open up this opportunity for them to get cleaner power. Gas is a gas utilities, it's just one type of fossil fuel, and we're really expanding this to providing more space. In addition, you know, not only is it clean energy, but it's also control. It's demand response. It's making sure that by having everything connected, that really is providing people this opportunity to not just use energy and use power when they need it, but to control the way it's used, to share it across the board, to create this like give and take that's really, really necessary for us to get to a clean energy future and to meet our energy goals. So I want to take a second to kind of just discuss in my mind, you know, the heart of our story and where we are right now. Because a decade ago, people were just beginning to understand the value of clean power. If you think back to 2011, you know, engagement in the energy future seemed something that was really being done on the high level. You know, there were solar panels and wind turbines, but not as much done on the community and individual level. And it wasn't really a chance for people to get involved in this really feasible and authentic way. But just 10 years later, thinking from 2011 to 2021, everything has really changed. Clean energy costs are at an all-time low. You're seeing these zero carbon energy bills passing through legislatures. You're seeing EVs on the market that are long range, affordable, reasonable. People are really swapping over to them in a serious way. There are more than 1 million solar rooftops across the country and a solar mandate in California. And more importantly, we're really beginning to see people embrace individual choice and what that means. So by educating people about these things, by talking about how they can get solar on the roof, EVs in their garage, giving them information about decisions that they make every day. So when to wash their dishes, how they should be cooking, what temperature to set their thermostats to. You're not telling them what to do, but you're giving them so many different opportunities to be able to take control of their own energy future and really make the decisions that contribute to carbon-free energy. And that's because people want to own their own choices. They want to improve their lives and those of their communities. They want better air quality in their homes. They want less reliance on fossil fuels. And they want the best technology at an affordable price. And that's really the heart of electrification, is that it's technology focused. It's providing people a simpler, better use case. And people want to make a legitimate difference. So it's a really win-win situation for them in so many ways. Our job isn't to create value for these consumers, but it's really to tell them about what already exists and what will continue to exist in the future. So if we share our knowledge and believe in our goal, I fundamentally believe that people will too. And those neighbors and communities that we speak to will see the value in electrification. So on that note, we see this value, but we're also kind of catching the winds. We're seeing people pay more attention to things like heat pumps. We're seeing outlets cover things, as you guys might notice this guy who was in a video on The Verge because it's part of technology, as I mentioned. We're seeing outlets that aren't necessarily traditionally friendly to always, the most clean or progressive or renewable option, talking about the value of induction cooktops. We're seeing people talking about home heating and why they need to be rethinking it. We're seeing all these all-electric codes, and it just keeps going and going. And what we're really seeing is that there is just this there's just this belief that something like a heat pump water heater, an electric dryer, an induction stovetop, this can all come together to be a true hero of what we're trying to create. We're at this really interesting part in our history and in our future, and we're seeing all of these things kind of come together to kind of create this path forward for us as part of the Switches On campaign. So as we mentioned, our campaign purpose is to encourage consumers to swap out their appliances, but our campaign goals are really simpler than that. It's to educate people. So we are coming from a place of most people really don't know about this and don't know about the value of electrification. So we have an opportunity here to just tell people about what we think needs to happen. Inspire them. We want them to recognize not only is this an important thing for our collective future, but something that they can actually do. And then it's switching. And that goal is a really tangible one where we want to provide support as people go through the process of swapping out their appliances. So that means making it as easy as possible, cutting as much red tape as possible. And that's really something we're looking to do through this campaign. So as we are thinking about how people are swapping over their homes, we really want to take electrification and ensure that everyone's recognizing how it's just this imperative part of the larger picture and the macro level view of what your home looks like and how it can contribute to a better energy system. So there are, these different pillars that people really can think about when they're looking at what does it mean to have a connected home, or what does it mean to have a home of the future. So it's things that reflect your lifestyles, right? So an induction stovetop, a fireplace, a car. Then there are home improvement things. So things that you don't necessarily interact with on a daily basis, but it improves the efficiency and the air quality of your home, and it can really have better performance. So things like a heat pump water heater, that electric dryer. And then finally, it's taking those those aspects of electrification and ensuring that your home is more resilient and that it's ready to kind of take control and be a real use case on the electric grid. And that's what future proofing looks like. So that's when you get the home battery in your garage, you get the solar panels on your roof that helps power all your electric appliances, that you do this electric panel upgrade. So again, while this campaign is really focusing on the appliances that people should be switching out to get to this better energy future, it's all part of this bigger puzzle. And we're providing these puzzle pieces to help people move forward. And when we're saying people, there's an entire system here that we are talking about who really benefits and who can be a part of this switch. So first, as we mentioned, if we're thinking about our goals for this campaign, there is education, and that's really just the general public. Again, we're starting from a place where people have very few preconceived notions about electrification, and it's really foundational to the success of this campaign is just telling them what that is and telling them, making sure we're busting any myths that they might have, giving them an opportunity to really rethink what their responsibility is and what their input is here. So that's people who might not be, getting a new stove tomorrow, but it is people who will continue to think about this, and next time that opportunity comes up, they're going to want to make the choice of electric. Then we have the enablers, who are the people that are just, essential to making this entire process work. And those are the people who support the decision makers. So contractors, designers, architects, sellers, manufacturers, anybody who is the general public is going to and seeing as a resource and as a guide for this entire process. And we really want to be working hand in hand with these people so that they really intuitively feel the benefits of electrification, not just for the general public, but for them as well. And finally, we're also speaking to decision makers. So these are the more short-term switchers who are able to truly switch out their appliances. So homeowners, yes, but also landlords, homeowners associations, groups like that. They're really investing in cost and value and need. They're impacted by the messaging that we share, but ultimately they're the ones who are getting electrification across the finish line right now. And they're the ones who are actually making the switch. So when we are talking to all of these people, what do they actually care about? And, beyond just why is electrification important, it's like what is important to them and the different things that they utilize in their lives and their homes. So health and environment, that is an important one, but beyond just the macro level environment, it's really about people who have children in their homes. They want to make sure that indoor air quality is good. They want to make sure that it's not exacerbating their kids' asthma to have a gas-powered stove, or that they're contributing to worse air quality with venting outside. These are things that are important when you can make it tangible for people and their families. Resiliency. As everybody has seen, especially lately, something I read the other day, that 1 in 3 Americans have lived in a county that was hit by a natural disaster in the last week, which is so crazy to think about. And it's just like inarguable that we are in a really changing time. And more we're seeing how our energy system is one of the things that is so imperative to protecting us or kind of leaving us out to dry. And creating a more resilient home and a more resilient system is not just attractive to people, but it is becoming one of the most imperative things for making them feel safe and protected in their homes. So cost, obviously, that's just a driver for every human, right? And for people who really recognize that, yes, they care about all these things, but at the end of the day, if they can't afford to make a switch, they're not going to do it. And then performance, they want to make sure that they're not sacrificing the value of their appliance in order to hit all of these other things. They really want to be able to have a good experience, whether it's cooking, whether it's having their hot water heat up for a shower, whether that's doing their laundry. There are just so many things that at the day-to-day level, we need to make sure we're not asking people to give up something. We're only contributing and we're only making their lives easier. So what is in the way? If there are all these potential values to electrification, what are the things that hold people back? So previous experience and association. I can't see people's hands, but I will definitely raise this. How many of us have talked about induction or electric stoves and people said, I hate electric stoves. I had one once in college and it was terrible? Because that has certainly happened to me, and I've had to do a lot of trying to explain to people about how things are different now. Awareness and education. So obviously this campaign is just so committed to that, but there is some real basics that people just don't understand. So why is it better to be grid connected? What even is a heat pump? Green fatigue, while we're giving people all these options and we're empowering them to make their own decisions, it can be really overwhelming, and people feel a lot of guilt and they get frustrated when it's hot outside and we're telling people not to run their air conditioning or wash their dishes. Like trying to guilt people into these decisions can make it a lot harder. Cost. So as we all know, we're in a nascent market right now, and it's seen as expensive to swap over, and that is something, not only is it something that we are taking into consideration throughout this campaign, but we are trying to create an entire system where it becomes not even an issue because the market itself is responding to these costs. So lack of urgency. If you think about when people actually swap out their appliances, it's really often in an emergency. So unless your water heater breaks, oftentimes you're not swapping it out. If everything, truly, this is the epitome of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, because people, you know, and when it does break, that they just want to get the cheapest, fastest, quickest option. So what we're trying to do is really set a lot of groundwork and give them an impetus for switching here. And then intimidation, like this is a scary thing. And people think it can be really confusing to swap out your whole home appliance. You have to deal with an entire process. Anybody who has ever redone anything in their home knows that it can be a huge pain. And so a big part of what we need to do here is ensure that we are making it not simple, because you just can't simplify the process to a degree, but the most authentic thing we can do is tell people, it's not simple, but we are here to guide you, and we are here to make it as easy for you as possible. We'll take the onus on us so that that is not something that gets in your way. And so when we're looking at each of these different obstacles, we need to think about how we actually meet those challenges. So within this campaign, that's exactly how we've broken it down into each different component. So the first, in terms of previous experience or association, is community and cultural alignment. And you're going to hear about this a lot through the campaign, which is that we need to speak to people on their level. This is so imbued in the equity space, which we'll be getting to as well, but just in general, like recognizing that we need to hear from people about what their experience is, and then give them the opportunity to have a different one and feel connected to their communities and feel that this is something that is right for them. Awareness and education. We are building levelized education. What we mean by that is kind of both top down and bottom up, which Rebecca will get to soon, about how we are having people's friends and family talk about this, but also doing this, air blanket type of really making sure that there is so much information and resources for them. Green fatigue. We aren't just asking people to do each little item, and if they don't do it, they're in trouble, but we're actually building a movement. And the more that people see this as a movement, the more it becomes less frustrating and more exciting every time you're able to contribute to it. Cost, we're really focusing, especially with the tech team, about this idea of incentives. And then something I really am passionate about is this idea of bundling, which is, yes, if you do one appliance at a time, it can be frustrating and it can be expensive. But if you're getting solar and if you're doing all of this together, you are creating a real value. Lack of urgency. So we are speaking, not only laying that groundwork, but also ensuring that people recognize availability and the value of immediate payoff, especially for certain types of appliances. And then intimidation, this is a big one for this campaign. And it's really ensuring that we are holding people's hands and we're almost being their energy therapists. And we do that through guidance and support. We give them not only resources, but show them how to use those resources. We provide experts who are able to talk to them and really make sure that people understand what they're getting into. And we just provide support, whether that's support through communication, support through assets, support through incentives, really helping people recognize that we're not asking them to do this in a vacuum, but it's part of an entire community effort. With that, I'm going to swap over to Rebecca, who will be able to walk you guys through the actual details of our campaign and next steps.
Good morning, everyone. And Jess, you always get me more excited. So thanks for that. So I'm going to get down to the nitty gritty here. What is this campaign, and how is the campaign going to meet our goals? So as we talked about earlier in the presentation, the campaign is aiming at educating people, inspiring people, and then helping them when they've actually decided to make the switch. And so when you think about educating people, perhaps it goes without saying, but people process information differently. They learn differently. And so we're really going to go about driving this awareness with a variety of different kind of ways to push the messaging that Jess just talked about. So that'll include paid media, which might be your digital ads or radio ads, kind of more traditional advertising. Earned media, which is more of your articles and your PR kind of content that might be out there talking about the switches on. Social media, which is in the kind of avenues that some people look at every day, sometimes multiple times a day. So your Facebooks, your LinkedIn's, your Twitters, and Instagram, and then local engagement, which we'll talk a little bit more about. And all of this is really so that we can lead people to content that they can digest at their own pace and share with others. So that's kind of the education piece. Then we also, under the Inspire portion of this, is really getting people to recognize that this is a choice that they can make. And when this is a choice that they can make, how do they kind of arrive at that? Well, sometimes it is when they're out shopping. And so we're going to be looking at retail partnerships and how do we reach people when they're thinking about these purchases. The social piece that I just talked about, people interact with that daily and kind of get those messages, and that's where they can kind of see that this is choices that other people are making, so they can do it too. And then our ambassador program, which I'm super excited about, I'll talk about in a little bit, really kind of going to increase the reach into all different communities. When it gets to switching, once somebody's decided they're going to switch, how do we make it easier? And this is really a process of guidance and support. So here is where we come in with some of our web tools that will be hosted on the site. We'll talk a little bit more about that and our expert guides and partner expansion. And I think this part is important to take a minute to talk about the aligned messaging that comes with partner expansion. So we've talked all about, how we want to reach people. But people sometimes can get confused if they're hearing different messages from different places about the same thing. And so when we have a really great aligned partner group, and this means partners who are utilities or CCAs or retailers or manufacturers or contractors or industry partners like solar, if they're hearing the same message about the same thing, it really removes that barrier and maybe some of that doubt of the decisions that they're making. So with that, at the heart of this, we're really trying to spread the message widely, and this includes our underserved communities. So I want to take a second here and talk about equity because I think it's really important. Underserved communities tend to experience the worst impacts of climate change and often struggle with housing stability or even housing quality, making this kind of a challenge for those groups. So we've got 3 methods that we're going to kind of explore to help the underserved communities. One is promoting the great work that some of the environmental justice groups are already doing to help those communities by kind of using our website to kind of put people in touch with some of those programs. 45% of Californians are renters. They don't even have the ability to make this decision. And so one way we can kind of help reach those folks and give them access to clean energy is by doing some landlord outreach and promoting incentives with landlords and helping landlords help people who are renters have access to clean energy. And then finally here, the community outreach portion. So we're partnering with community-based organizers and some influencers to ensure that these communities are receiving value, and maybe more than anything, having equity as a thread through all of the components of this campaign really means making this information accessible to everybody, or as accessible as it can be to everybody. And one way we will go about doing that is with our website, for an example, which will be, viewable in multiple different languages, really expanding the reach of who we can get to. So on the top of our website, the website is existing, but we are really going to pump it up to 100 here with the website. And the plan is to have, all the diversity of people, if they're interested and they come here, that they can find something that suits their needs, right? And kind of answers what they're looking for easily, which is a challenge. So what that might look like is educational resources. So say you're a person who just heard this word electrification on a Instagram post. You're like, what is this all about? So you want to click it, and maybe you go and you see a quick video on an electrified future, and you learn a little bit more about what is this concept. Or you might be a person who never needed an air conditioner before, but all of a sudden it's getting to be 90 degrees on a regular basis where you live. And you know what, I need to look a little bit more about some heating and cooling options. And you might go and look at how a heat pump works, some kind of infographic like that. Or you might be somebody who is, really wants to see examples. They're not so sure, and really they do a lot better by seeing kind of people talk about their experience. So, and for them, we might have things like blogs on how to electrify, spotlights for contractors, or even case studies for just how people who went through the process and what they experienced. Additionally, we're going to have a find a contractor tool, which will people will be able to type in their zip code and pull up rebates and contractors who are local. And we will have a contractor hub that is really tailored for contractors, and will be a one-stop shop for them to be able to enroll for incentives and in the tech program, to be able to be listed on the website, to get marketing resources so that they're messaging to their customers the same way that we're messaging to the broader population, and connect with each other on training and resources. And the last exciting piece is this expert guidance. So on the website, people will be able to go, and maybe they're people who are ready to do this, but they are just, I don't know how to do construction projects. Like, that's not my thing. And this is the way they can kind of reach out to somebody who really walks them through every step. And this is just an example of what that might look like, where they get to speak to a real human who will kind of can talk them through some of their constraints, what are they looking for, and what are maybe some good contractor options, and get some rough estimates on what that might cost. But for people who are not quite there, we have our ambassador program. And for this is all new for us. And this is really meant to help us expand our reach to diverse communities of people who maybe aren't there yet. And we really see this kind of going in a few different paths. One is our influencers, and those are really the people in the community who people look up to. They might want to aspire to be them. They may not know them. We also have our neighbors. So maybe you're 2 doors down from you, somebody just replaced their stove and they're super excited about it. And they're like, hey, I just want to show this to everybody. And this really would give them an opportunity to share with their neighbors, and become part of the movement as being an ambassador. And then finally, and maybe most importantly, is our contractor and enabler group, which Jess mentioned earlier. And this will, contractor enablers will really have the opportunity here to establish themselves as leaders in the electrification movement. They can be people who can be mentors to some of their peers. They can kind of spread the word. And they're really, really important because contractors are a major touch point for people when they're making the decision of what appliance to put in when they're in a bind. But that is not the only touch point. The other touch point for people when they're in decisions about making a bind is retail. And so we really want to start exploring our retail partnerships, opportunities so that if you're, a person who's just kind of scratching their head, maybe thinking about doing a retrofit, but you're not so sure, so you're shopping, that you just get really excited by electric options, particularly some of the high efficiency electric options. Or if you're in a bind and something just broke and you're going to poke around online to figure out how do I just buy a new one of these things, that you can kind of quickly get to an option that helps you move on the path for your all electric home. So as you can kind of see, the switches on is not new, but it's definitely expanding and evolving. In our current phase, what we're really focusing on is going from pilot to a statewide launch. We want to expand our partnerships so we can really boost that aligned messaging in different parts of the market. We want to highlight all the new and great incentives that are going to come out with the program to really get people pumped and ready to kind of make some of these switches. And then we have a bunch of new campaign elements that we're introducing, a few that we talked about, the expert guides, the ambassadors, and our kind of retail pilot. But this is not the end. We will be going for years to come with this. And those future phases will really be based on learning, on research of what worked and what didn't work, iterating and expanding the reach further. So today we've talked about a whole bunch, but if you don't take away anything else, we want you to take away this. Now is the time for home electrification. People are open to this. They just don't maybe know enough and they're waiting to hear more. This campaign really aims to educate people, inspire people, and support people who are ready to make that switch. And the fun thing is this can be a test case almost, so that we can build out a template and use something like this switches on, customize and replicate it in other locations. And perhaps most important is that you can be a part of our movement. So with that, I hope you join us. At the end of this month, on September 29th, we will be having our partner kickoff meeting, and everybody gets to chat with each other and hear how they can kind of provide feedback and our path forward, what I like to be calling our march to the launch, which will be December 15th. Lots to do between now and then, but if you're interested in joining us, please reach out, or just have other questions, please reach out to Jess or myself at these email addresses. And with that, I think we can move to questions.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Wonderful. Thank you both. And I think you folks can see why we're so excited to have brought both Jess and Rebecca into the team, and why they're just going to be fantastic stewards of this campaign, a critical campaign to the building decarbonization movement. There has been just a fabulous amount of questions and commentary in the question and answer period. So I'm going to ask some of these questions. I'm going to combine some of them. Some of them are related to the campaign, and some of them are just more general stuff going on in the energy sector right now. So we'll get to each of those. So there's been a number of questions about resilience, and questions about people's concern about the grid and grid stability, and whether or not we're ever truly going to be able to get to high levels of electrification until we have small scale storage that's really affordable. And so could you talk a bit, because this is focused on the consumer education side of this, what is the Switches On campaign going to be doing around messaging, resiliency, and electrification?
Awesome question. I love this so much. I'm sure Panama read that and was so happy, because he knows how much I love talking about solar and batteries and microgrids and demand response. So this is very exciting for me. I think the answer to that question really comes with this idea of levelized education. In my mind, isn't just where you get your information from, but also how you roll it out, right? So electrification is somewhat complicated only because there are so many different nuances that kind of need to be built on itself. So as many of us in the industry know, if you electrify correctly, it's not about adding more stuff to the grid, but instead adding more control to the grid, ensuring that communities are able, whether it's at the substation level or at the home level, to basically isolate when need be, provide power to their home and to everyone else's home, and really ensure that it's a nimble system that can respond to changes that we may know are coming or may not know are coming. And so I think that getting to that point and having people recognize that is kind of electrification 102, right? So right now we're at 101, where we are just telling people the basics. We are saying, here's why electrification is important. Here's how it really connects to this idea of like a connected home and a grid. And then we really thought about this a lot in terms of like when we were going to roll out the campaign, and whether we should be talking to people at a time when they might be worried about wildfires or outages or extreme weather, which honestly is all the time right now, but even more so during the summer versus not during the summer. And I think that again, knowing when to talk about resilience and knowing when not to are kind of integral to consumer education, right? I have this theory that I always talk about, which is like the theory of concentric circles of information, which is like, when do you share information with people and how much do you give them? You don't want to give them an entire fire hose of something that they don't know anything about. You want to provide them the basics, give them the opportunity to ask questions, which you then respond to. So you should know everything if you are trying to educate someone, and you should give them 10% of the information and build on that as they feel that they understand it. I feel that might have been a bit of a roundabout way of explaining this, but the short answer is like resilience is so integral to this work. It is a bit, you have to have, in my mind, a bit of understanding of the basics, true ABCs of electrification before you can kind of get into that, or else there is the fear that people will misunderstand and will think that you're just adding more things to an unstable grid versus actually providing an opportunity for the grid to work better and for your electricity to work better. Rebecca, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is, because that's a journey, like a progression of people asking questions. I think when people get to that question, right, the website I just wanted to mention is not necessarily meant to be a one and done. It's meant to be something that people can kind of come back to, and we can enhance and kind of keep adding content as people kind of go through, their own learning process on this. And can keep coming into it at whatever level they're at. So I think there's going to be really a lot of opportunity in that platform to have people ask the next question when they're ready to ask that next question and look for the answer.
Great, thank you. Some questions about the local ambassador program, and if you all could speak more about the local ambassador program. I will say that as I talk to people about the campaign, immediately people are like, where is my yard sign and when can I have it? I want to tell people about my heat pump water heater because they can't see it. But could you talk about how you're going to be identifying local ambassadors? Are they going to be compensated in any way? And maybe just talk a little bit about some of the preliminary ideas about how we're going to run the local ambassador program.
I'll go ahead and take that, Jess. Yeah, so, the first part of that question is, how are we going to put out the call? And so it's going to be we're going to go through our membership, any folks who have expressed interest, and our partners who have already kind of joined us with this campaign. And we will have an interest call go out with a Google web form so people can kind of fill out if they're interested, and we'll start kind of recruiting that way. And then from there, we're going to do a little bit more of a targeted approach to make sure we really hit as many communities as we can, particularly some of our underserved communities. We're going to do a little bit more of a search for, community organizations who can maybe put us in touch with leaders or influencers in those communities. Depending on the type of ambassador that you are, we expect it to be a little bit tiered. Some of the higher tier, like influencer type ambassadors, we do foresee being a paid engagement of some sort, but there will definitely be perks and benefits, kind of regardless of where you are in with this, and maybe more than anything, all of the ambassadors are really intended to be part of movement building and be kind of in touch with each other as part of this moving forward. Did I get all the pieces of that question, Pamela?
And to just kind of add to that a little bit, I think that, as Rebecca mentioned, the ambassador program is integral to this idea of movement building, because we're not selling appliances. Like, if we were going to do that, it wouldn't really matter if it was gas or electric, but we're really like having people rally around this idea of electrification. And so I think that sometimes a mistake people make when they're looking at these big consumer campaigns is they're like, okay, you've done what I asked you to, and now it's over. But it's really, in my mind, just the beginning, right? It's, you have gotten people on board, and you have these people who really oftentimes, as Panama mentioned, like want to sing from the rooftops about their home. They want people to see their induction stove. They want to take people on a weird tour of their basement and show them their heat pump, And so we want to give people that opportunity. We want to not just give them the yard signs, but also help them organize tours for their neighbors, or be a part of a social media campaign with us. We want to write a spotlight on them. We want to maybe do like in-person events, hopefully, at their community level. And so those are for the local neighbor ambassadors. As Rebecca mentioned, again, like influencer ambassadors are also, it's inherent to the HEMES principles of equity, really letting communities speak for themselves. And this is an opportunity for us to also like identify community leaders, whether that's online or offline. So yes, influencers in the home space for certain types of communities, but also religious leaders in communities, people who run certain programming on the ground, and asking them why they think this could be beneficial to their communities, hearing that and trying to ensure that that is what we are supporting, is we're supporting their voices and their ways of speaking to their communities.
Great. And thank you both for that. Rebecca, just to let you know, we are having some audio issues with your audio. So I don't know if it's related to movement or something else, but maybe just be sure to really project as you speak. So related to that is something around like being able to compare yourself to an average home or to your neighbors in your area. And so someone asked about, they said the campaign looks great. One aspect they don't see is personalized rapid feedback. For example, feedback via your smartphone on your recent carbon emissions and how they compare to neighbors, and how that may have changed as a result of upgrades being made. Any thoughts on including that in the campaign?
I love that. That sounds super interesting. I think that, first of all, whoever suggested that, excellent idea, and kind of the exact type of feedback we're looking when we're talking about partner expansion. Like, this is exactly what we're looking for, is community feedback. We're in this nascent market. That's such a great idea in terms of like, I know there are a lot of software opportunities for comparison about energy savings. Rebecca, I'm interested in your thoughts on that, but like, that's a perfect example of something we can really focus on in future phases. Like, this phase is very much so kind of getting this off the ground, and then being able to really integrate things like tools and feedback on your smartphone, or all of your different type of technology appliances. Like, that's the epitome of this idea of the connected home and an individual impact on their community grid. So thank you. Rebecca, do you have any thoughts to add to
that? No, just agree. And I think there are actually, in a previous lifetime, I've done some research on apps that I think were in development in this space. And there may be an opportunity there to partner with apps that are already kind of in their early stages. So I think that's a great idea and something that we can look into for sure. Thanks.
Totally. If anyone on this call works for any sort of software company that does that, hit us up. Tell us. We'd love to work with you.
Wonderful. A few lightning round questions. What is the geographic area that this campaign is going to cover in the next phase?
Rebecca.
All right, so we are not excluding any geography, so anybody who wants to partner is welcome to do that. So that's first of all. But otherwise, we are going to be focusing on the 14 kind of counties that have the largest 80% of the households in the state. So various parts of the Southern California, Inland Empire, San Diego, kind of the broader Bay Area, and so a few parts of the Central Valley. But again, not meant to exclude, just really meant to kind of get in this next phase the largest amount of people. And if you are in an area that is not one of those areas and you want to participate, we will include that area too.
We have a really robust partner offering, which we didn't even get to here, but there's a lot of like regional customization for partners. So if you are a partner that has a regional focus, we want to support you getting that message out in your region. So again, like all partners across the state.
Great. When will the website improvements be up and available?
We are planning to have our website launch on that December 15th date. So that is our target.
Fantastic, thank you. A question about the social media. There's some people that really want to help promote the program and promote electrification, and they're wondering if there's going to be pre-made tweets that could be influencers, either official or unofficial influencers, could use to amplify. Is that part of the plan, or maybe just more broadly, can you speak about how the campaign plans to use social media and partners?
Yes, is the short answer to that. In phase 2, they've been providing these social media toolkits, which I know a lot of partners have really enjoyed. We're rethinking some of the aspects of the toolkits only to make them like really more valuable to people in a lot of ways. So ensuring that we're promoting some of these resources that we're planning on putting on the website, having like really drilling down on the idea of electrification as a whole. We're figuring out exactly what that looks like, but I rest assured there will be pre-made tweets, opportunities. If anybody wants support for promoting this on social even before that launch, feel free to reach out. Rebecca, anything to add?
Yeah, just that we will have some version of a packet, and then it'll probably also in parallel be a way to push out, because tweets are more of a real-time thing, push out kind of tweets as they come up that are relevant that may not be in a pre-prepared package. So I do foresee both of those being kind of a component, and we will just need to kind of fine-tune how we get that to people who are outside of our that will automatically go to partners.
Great. Hopefully we can hear you on this one, Rebecca, but this next one's one that's near and dear to your heart. And somebody's saying, I'd like to hear more about the campaign working with building and planning departments and environmental departments, which could do a great deal to promote electrification. This has been a big part of the talk. Rebecca's our internal champion about those permit counters. Rebecca, you want to talk about how we're thinking about building departments and the like?
Yes, I am for sure. So I'm going to try and speak extra loud. Sorry if I'm yelling at you, just to make sure I'm clear. But our plan there, and we've already kind of started, is to speak to kind of the cities and counties that are in charge of those local kind of building related permits, and see if there's opportunities either to have links on websites so that people can kind of cross-reference each other and get to where they want to go, or potentially have flyers or handouts or educational materials at permit counters or digital permit counters. So if you are one of those cities and counties who wants that now, please reach out to me, because I think we can kind of work that into our process here in the short term.
Mm-hmm. In addition to just, the permitting counters, like if you are in any sort of municipal or regional government, somebody suggested we can talk to school superintendents and, sustainability leads. And those are really we have a lot of really cool ideas for partnering on things like that. So yes, permitting, but also think outside the building box. We're happy to, we want to take this across the board. So.
Great. A question about the contractors, and I think we're going to wrap it up. There's been a bunch of great questions, some of them related to campaigns, many are related to just electrification issues that we have, and it's one of the things we love about these webinar series. And so we'd love to talk to you about this. So please do info@buildingdecarb.org if you'd like to discuss some of these issues we haven't had time to discuss today. But a question from one of the leaders of building energy efficiency says, can you give us an idea of the propensity of current contractors who are actually leading in electrification? I still hear a lot of skepticism from contractors as to the value and customer interest in heat pump water heaters and cost of electrifying retrofits compared to other solutions. Love the presentation and campaign overview, well done. So what I can say is that we have about just under 100 contractors on the Switches On website right now, switcheson.org, to find a contractor or find rebates available to you by your zip code in California. And what I can say right now is what we're hearing informally from our contractors is that their business is through the roof, that people are having trouble booking them out into the late fall, early winter at this point because demand is so high. The electrification of that, 1 to 5% of folks that are already know about this and are trying to do this for all the right reasons seems to have, the interest seems to have been peaked, and we're starting to see that interest result in demand for these services. And so I think we have that first stage of interest, and now it's a question of how do we build towards that second stage of electrification where we start mainstreaming it and taking it from the 1 to 5% into the next 20% of folks of interest. And that's what this campaign will be really about, is moving from early adopters into the beginning of mainstreaming efforts. So the initial feedback from contractors is very good. They've been appreciating the website and they've been getting more business out of it. And with that, I'm going to draw this episode of Building Decarbonization Coalition Presents to a close. Thank you so much for joining us. Jess, Rebecca, thank you so much for presenting today and your leadership on this issue and on this program. And we look forward to seeing you all in 2 weeks for the CSU's Master Plan for Decarbonization. Thank you all very much. Keep decarbonizing out there, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.